It was just two lovers sitting in a car, listening to blind.
Fellow Earthlings, welcome back. Last episode, we finished up the vegetative stage, and now the flower stage has officially begun. For the first 2 weeks of the flower stage, they were doing beautiful. During this time, it is known as the transition phase. Even though the light cycle has changed to 12 hours on and 12 hours off, the plant isn't focused on producing buds just yet. Instead, it's preparing for reproduction. During this time, the plant goes through what is called the stretch, where it can grow significantly taller, almost doubling in size depending on its genetics. Everything was looking good. Besides this one part, let me take you back to the last week of veg. My dumbass took the tape off before it was ready. Then, as I was trying to put it back together and tape it back up, it got significantly worse. So then I decided it would be best to do a botched job at putting it back together, as you can see here. And it was like this for the first 2 weeks of flower. So I didn't think anything of it until I was putting on the trellis net. If you're paying close attention, you may have noticed one of my plants is starting to look a little different. At this point, I was beginning to notice something wasn't right. The plant is droopy compared to the one on the right. Even with all that going on, it was still time to install the trellis net. So I went ahead and did that. This was at the end of week 2, beginning of week 3. Trellises are used to help spread out the branches so that light is able to reach the bud sites and create a more even canopy, which will lead to consistent flower development. The trellis I'm using is a reusable trellis, and it did come with my whole tent setup. The AC Infinity Advanced Growth System kit, which if you watched my first video that I posted on this channel, you will see me putting it together and everything it came with. Once the trellis netting was on, I left it alone. And that's when small white hairs called pistils started to form at the nodes, which is one of the very first signs that bud formation has begun. About a week later, when I went to check on the plants, the right side, which is the one showing on the screen, was doing exactly what it should be doing. But the left plant, well, it was looking like this. She looked burnt, crispy, a little crunchy. I have been having issues with this specific plant since the beginning. And honestly, because I'm not keeping track of things in a journal, I have no idea what's going on. It absolutely looks like nutrient burn. But at the same time, I kept thinking about the fact that the main stem was dying because I literally tore it in half. I decided to cut the nutrients and just feed it with plain water. As the weeks went on, it got worse. It got way worse. And because I lost a lot of footage from this grow, you don't see me breaking it down and throwing it away. So instead, my dudes, we skipped to this part. And PSA, don't be me. Journal what's going on in your grow. Life got the best of me, and I didn't keep up with not only weeks, I didn't know what week it was on because the veg stage was so long. I almost vegged for 16 weeks, and I lost count. So I really have no idea the time frames of this grow. I don't keep track of the pH. I don't keep track of what I'm feeding. In my mind I am, but my mind it needs to be written down somewhere. Besides that, I had fun. I had so much fun throughout this whole journey, and I was able to keep at least one plant alive. So that is a win. And this is where the magic happens. Look how beautiful it is. And the trichomes are starting to form, and the pistils are starting to turn orange. And this right here is when we decide if it's ready to harvest or not. So those little tiny crystal-like bulbs, that is a trichome. And we harvest based off the color it is. Trichomes glass-like and transparent. This means the plant is not ready. THC hasn't fully developed and the effects tend to be weaker. The cloudy, milky trichomes, they're white, opaque in appearance. They have peak THC levels and produce a more uplifting, potent effect. Many growers harvest when most trichomes are cloudy. Amber trichomes, they're golden or amber color. Some THC has begun converting into CBN. Too many amber trichomes can mean you're past peak potency. General harvest targets for certain desired effects, such as energetic and uplifting, the trichomes are usually anywhere from 90 to 100% cloudy, almost no amber. For a more balanced effect, 80 to 90% cloudy and 10 to 20% amber. For the relaxy, sleepy effects, 60 to 70% cloudy and 30 to 40% amber. Trichomes are the most reliable indicator, but it's good also to look for other things that tell you the plant is ready, where 80 to 90% of the pistils have darkened or curled inward, which are the orange strings you see. Those are pistils. They're originally white when they start to form and look like little puff balls, and then they start to turn a dark orange, red, or brown, depending on the state of maturity. The buds usually stop swelling and leaves start to fade. Usually depends on genetics and growing style. Every single time I see these, I keep thinking they're balls, but no, these are the vaginas. I keep thinking that she's gonna come up her hermaphrodite on me. She's gonna be say, bitch, I'm trans. Love the trans community BTW, but in this case, we do not want it to herm out. Basically, cannabis is a dioecious plant, meaning it typically grows as either male or female. What we mostly want in this case is calyxes, the small teardrop-shaped structure that contains an ovule. This is where the seed develops if pollination occurs. While for a male plant, they produce pollen sacs, which are small round sacs that develop in clusters. When mature, they open and release pollen to fertilize female flowers. When it does herm out, it does produce these nanners, which are also known as bananas. They're yellow banana-shaped anthers that emerge directly from the buds. These can release pollen without forming a full pollen sac. Over the next few weeks, I didn't see any signs of herming, and I continued to monitor the trichomes to see when it would be ready to harvest. When the trichomes were about 70% milky and 30% amber, it was time to cut this bad girl down. The first thing I did was turn off the light. A lot of growers and cultivation sites choose to harvest with the lights off, but it's not a strict requirement. I personally couldn't just work with the light off, so I turned on my overhead light in my room and I eventually opened a window. I did go out and buy these bypass pruning shears. These are perfect for cutting at the base of the plant where it's a little bit thicker than the other stems. Once you cut down your plant, you want to hang it. So I cut one of the sides off to this hanger, and I'm going to use this to hang the plant to dry. I started off by cutting off the twist ties, and then I worked on removing the trellis. Now, trellises can be kind of hard to remove sometimes. At least when I worked on the cultivation site, it was a pain in the ass. So I would, because those were disposable trellis nettings that were at the cultivation site, so I would just cut vertically. I would cut vertically each square on each row until it would release the plant. In this case, it was fairly easy. I just had one plant. I rub it down with some rubbing alcohol and then I store it away for the next round. Besides bud formation, one of my favorite parts of harvest was watching the plants fade. The leaves transform from green into like beautiful shades of orange, red, and even a little bit of purple. This natural color change happens when the plant reaches the end of its life cycle. And I guess apparently it relieves pigments that were always hidden beneath the chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is what gives the plant its green color. Next, what I did was I took down the grow light. The bars that were holding the grow light, I needed to use to hang the plant. So I went ahead and removed the grow light to make more room. And as I was preparing to cut down the plant, I got my phone to record, and then I realized I wasn't recording. So I lost that footage. But here is how it looks after all the training that I did on it. It literally looks like one of those baby crib carousels. When I first hung it up, I just hung the plant as a whole. Over time, though, as it's drying, I separate it so that it dries more evenly. Harvest may feel like the finish line, but it's really the beginning of the next stage. Drying is all about slowly removing moisture while preserving the cannabinoids and terpenes that we have spent months growing. I hung my plant back in the tent because it's a controlled environment with gentle airflow. We want to aim for about 60 degrees Fahrenheit and 60% relative humidity, 60, 62. The goal isn't to dry the buds as quickly as possible, it's to dry them slowly and evenly. Once the smaller stems snap instead of bend, they will be ready for curing, which helps develop a smoother, more flavorful final product. My dudes and dudettes, I did it. I harvested my plant, my one plant that survived. If you have made it to the end of this video, comment down below, plant emoji, give me a like, and subscribe if you're interested in following along on the rest of this journey. Bye guys.